Captain Jake Morrison stared at the emergency message on his screen. The words made his stomach turn cold. New Haven colony was in trouble, and 15,000 people needed help right away. The mining colony sat on the edge of space where few ships traveled. A massive solar flare had hit their planet 3 days ago, killing all power and destroying their escape ships. Jake commanded the UES Guardian, one of Earth's fastest rescue ships. He had saved people before, but never this many. The Guardian was built for speed, not fighting. Its cargo holds could fit 3,000 people if they packed them tight. But 15,000 people needed more than one ship. Admiral Lisa Carter called from Earth Command. Her face appeared on the screen, looking worried but determined. She had gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Lisa had been Jake's commanding officer for 5 years, and he trusted her completely. "Jake, we're sending 3 ships to New Haven," Lisa said. "You'll command the mission. The UES Salvation and UES Hope are already moving to meet you. Captain Nick Hayes will command the Hope, and Captain Ryan Bell has the Salvation." Jake nodded. He knew both men well. Nick was young but smart, only 30 years old but already one of Earth's best pilots. Ryan was older, a veteran who had served in the border wars against pirates. Both were good men who would risk everything to save civilians. "What about the Korthak Empire?" Jake asked. "Intelligence says they've been moving ships into that area." Lisa's face grew darker. The Korthak were known throughout the galaxy as killers. They enslaved weak species and destroyed anyone who fought back. Most alien governments tried to avoid them completely. "We've had no contact with Korthak forces," Lisa said. "The solar flare should hide our rescue mission from their sensors. Get in, save who you can, and get out fast." Jake's ship jumped to hyperspace within an hour. The Guardian moved through the dark between stars while Jake studied the mission files. New Haven was a mining colony that dug rare metals from deep underground. The people there were mostly families: miners, engineers, doctors, and teachers. Many had children who had never seen Earth. 2 days later, the 3 Earth ships met at the edge of the New Haven system. Jake watched his screens as the Hope and Salvation dropped out of hyperspace. The 3 ships looked small against the endless black of space, but they carried Earth's best technology and finest crews. "Guardian, this is Hope." Nick's voice came over the radio. "All systems ready. My cargo holds are empty and waiting." "Salvation here," Ryan added. "We're ready to save some lives." Jake smiled despite his worry. These men would follow him into hell if it meant saving innocent people. That's what made humans different from many other species. They protected their own, no matter the cost. The 3 ships moved toward New Haven, their engines pushing them faster than most alien vessels could travel. Jake watched the sensor readings carefully. Something felt wrong. The system was too quiet. A mining colony should show lots of activity, ships moving back and forth, communication signals, energy readings from the mining equipment. Instead, the sensors showed almost nothing. "Captain," said Lieutenant Emma Torres, Jake's communications officer, "I'm picking up some signals from the planet. They're very weak." "Put them on speaker," Jake ordered. Static filled the bridge, then a human voice came through, broken and scared. "This is New Haven colony to any Earth ships. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Alien ships have surrounded the planet. They're taking our people. Please help us." Jake's blood turned to ice. The Korthak had found the colony first. "All ships, emergency speed," Jake commanded. "The colony is under attack." The 3 Earth ships raced toward New Haven, their engines glowing bright blue in the darkness. As they got closer, Jake's sensors began picking up massive alien ships orbiting the planet. The Korthak vessels were huge, black things that looked like metal sharks. Each one was 3 times larger than any Earth ship. "My God," Nick whispered over the radio. "There must be 20 of them." Jake counted the enemy ships on his screen. 23 Korthak warships surrounded New Haven like predators around wounded prey. On the planet's surface, he could see the lights of the human colony, but they were dim and scattered. Many areas that should have been bright with activity were completely dark. "Guardian, we should call for backup," Ryan said, his voice tight with worry. Jake thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. By the time backup arrived, every human on New Haven would be dead or enslaved. The Korthak didn't take prisoners unless they needed workers. Everyone else they killed. Negative, Jake said. "We go in now. Those people down there are counting on us." The 3 Earth ships moved closer to the planet, trying to stay hidden behind New Haven's 2 small moons. Jake could see Korthak landing craft moving back and forth between the warships and the colony. Each time they rose from the planet, the sensors showed they were full of people. "They're loading the colonists onto their ships," Emma reported. "Looks like they're taking them alive." That was something, at least. If the Korthak were taking prisoners, it meant the colonists had value as workers. But Jake knew what happened to human slaves in Korthak territory. They worked until they died, and they didn't live long. "Here's the plan," Jake said to his captains. "We hit them fast and hard. The Guardian will draw their attention while Hope and Salvation get as close to the planet as possible. Load up with people and run. Don't try to fight unless you have no choice." "And what about you?" Nick asked. "I'll keep them busy long enough for you to escape with the civilians." Jake didn't mention that the Guardian probably wouldn't survive such a mission. The Earthship was fast but lightly armed. Against 23 Korthak warships, it would last maybe 10 minutes in a straight fight. The three ships separated, moving toward different parts of the planet. Jake watched his friends disappear into the darkness, heading for the colony's main landing areas. He said a quick prayer for their safety, then turned his ship toward the largest group of Korthak vessels. "All hands prepare for combat," Jake announced to his crew. "We're going to save some lives today." The Guardian's engines roared as the ship raced toward its destiny. The three Earth ships moved like ghosts through the darkness around New Haven. Jake Morrison watched his sensors as the UES Hope and UES Salvation reached the planet's surface. Both ships landed near the main colony, their cargo doors opening to receive desperate civilians. Jake's Guardian flew straight at the Korthak fleet, weapons charging and engines burning bright. The alien ships detected him immediately. Warning alarms screamed through the Guardian's bridge as 23 enemy vessels turned toward the lone Earth ship. "Incoming transmission from the Korthak fleet," Emma Torres reported. "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. A hideous alien face appeared on the main display. The creature had gray skin, black eyes, and sharp teeth that looked designed for tearing meat. This was Warlord Thax, commander of the Korthak 7th Battle Fleet. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately," Thax snarled in broken English. "Your people on the planet belong to the Korthak Empire now. Leave this system or be destroyed." Jake stared back at the alien warlord without blinking. "Release our people and we'll consider leaving peacefully." Thax laughed, a sound like metal grinding against stone. "Humans make excellent slaves. Strong backs, clever minds. We will put them to good use in our mining operations." "Over my dead body," Jake said quietly. "That can be arranged," Thax replied, then cut the transmission. The Guardian shook as Korthak plasma bolts exploded around it. Jake's ship twisted and rolled, trying to avoid the deadly fire while shooting back with its smaller weapons. The Earthship's lasers carved bright lines across space, striking Korthak hulls but doing little real damage. Down on the planet, Nick Hayes and Ryan Bell worked frantically to load civilians onto their ships. The Hope and Salvation could hold 3,000 people each if they packed them into every available space. Families ran up the loading ramps carrying children and whatever belongings they could grab. "Guardian, this is Hope." Nick's voice crackled over the radio. "We've got 1,500 people aboard and more coming." "How much time do we have?" Jake dodged another plasma bolt and fired back at the nearest Korthak ship. "Take all the time you need. I'll keep them busy." But Jake knew he couldn't hold off 23 warships forever. The Guardian's shields were already down to 60%, and his weapons were barely scratching the enemy hulls. He needed a miracle, or his friends would never escape with their precious cargo of human lives. The miracle came from an unexpected source. Ryan Bell's voice suddenly filled the radio. "All ships, this is Salvation. I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it." "Talk to me, Ryan," Jake said while spinning his ship away from another volley of plasma fire. "I'm going to ram the command ship. Create enough confusion for Hope and Guardian to escape with the civilians." Jake's blood went cold. "Negative, Salvation. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Ryan said calmly. "I've got 2,800 people aboard, but Nick has 3,200. The math is simple, Jake. Save who you can." Before Jake could respond, the UES Salvation rose from the planet's surface and accelerated straight toward Warlord Thax's flagship. The Korthak ships turned their weapons on the approaching Earth vessel, but Ryan's ship kept coming. "Tell my wife I love her," Ryan said over the radio, then cut his transmission. The Salvation struck the Korthak flagship at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of white fire that lit up the entire system. The blast wave knocked nearby Korthak vessels off course and damaged their sensors. For a few precious minutes, the alien fleet was blind and confused. "Hope, get out of here now," Jake ordered. Nick's ship lifted off from New Haven with over 3,000 civilians packed into every corner. The Hope's engine strained under the extra weight, but the ship climbed toward space and safety. Jake turned the Guardian to follow, but his sensors screamed a warning. More Korthak ships were appearing at the edge of the system, dozens of them rising out of hyperspace like metal sharks smelling blood. "Guardian, this is Hope," Nick called. "I count 42 new contacts. It's an ambush." Jake's heart sank as he realized the truth. The Korthak had been waiting for Earth's rescue ships. They had used New Haven as bait, knowing humans would never abandon their civilians. Now 3 Earth ships were trapped in a system full of enemies with nowhere to run. The new Korthak fleet spread out around the system, cutting off every escape route. Jake counted over 60 alien warships in total, all armed with weapons that could turn his ship into scrap metal in seconds. Warlord Thak's face appeared on screen again, this time from a different ship. His black eyes glowed with cruel satisfaction. "Foolish humans," the alien warlord said. "Did you think we would not expect a rescue mission? Your species is so predictable. You cannot abandon your weak even when it means your own death." Jake tried to find words, but his mouth was dry. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, looking for any way out of the trap. "You have exactly 1 minute to surrender," Thax continued. "All ships will power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your civilians will make fine workers in our slave camps." "Go to hell," Jake said. Thax smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "As you wish." The alien warlord gave a signal and every Korthak ship in the system opened fire at once. Plasma bolts and energy beams filled space like a deadly light show. The first target was the UES Hope. Nick's ship tried to dodge, but it was too slow with all the extra weight from the civilians. Korthak weapons struck the Hope's hull, tearing through armor and into the ship's vital systems. The Earth vessel broke apart in seconds, taking Captain Nick Hayes and 3,200 innocent people with it. Jake watched his friend die and felt something break inside his chest. The civilians on the Hope had been children, families, people who had never hurt anyone. They had died because they trusted Earth to protect them. "Guardian, this is Admiral Carter," came a voice from Earth Command. "We're tracking your situation. Reinforcements are 12 hours away." 12 hours. Jake almost laughed. His ship would be dead in 12 minutes. The Korthak fleet turned its attention to the Guardian. 60 warships focused their weapons on one small Earth vessel. Jake's ship shook as plasma bolts hammered its shields. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge as systems failed one by one. "Shields down to 20%, Emma reported, her voice steady despite their hopeless situation. "Engines damaged. Weapons offline," added Lieutenant Carl Davis from the tactical station. Jake made his final decision. He opened a channel to Earth Command and began recording a message that would change everything. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Guardian," he said clearly. "We attempted to rescue 15,000 civilians from New Haven Colony. The Korthak Empire ambushed our rescue fleet and murdered over 5,000 innocent people. They showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and killed children without hesitation." The Guardian's hull began to crack under the enemy fire. Emergency lights flickered as power systems failed. "The Korthak have declared war on human civilians," Jake continued. "They must be made to pay for what they've done here. Every last one of them." The transmission ended as the Guardian exploded. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew died instantly, but their final message reached Earth Command with perfect clarity. In the escape pods scattered throughout the system, 400 survivors waited for rescue and watched their ships burn. They had seen the Korthak Empire's true face and they would never forget it. The massacre at New Haven was over. The war was about to begin. The news hit Earth like a physical blow. 5,000 civilians dead, 3 rescue ships destroyed, brave crews murdered while trying to save innocent lives. The Galactic Coalition rescue ships that finally reached New Haven found only empty buildings and scattered escape pods. President Claire Adams stood before the Earth Assembly, her face carved from stone. Behind her, a massive screen showed pictures of the dead. Families, children, elderly couples who had moved to New Haven for a peaceful retirement. The assembly hall was completely silent. "The Korthak Empire has committed an act of genocide against human civilians," Claire said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "They hunted our people like animals, enslaved our children, and murdered our heroes. This cannot stand, the president paused, looking directly into the cameras that would carry her words to every human world. As of this moment, a state of total war exists between humanity and the Korthak Empire. We will not rest until every single Korthak is dead and their species is nothing but a bad memory. The assembly erupted in cheers, but Claire raised her hand for silence. When the room quieted, her next words chilled everyone who heard them. This will not be a war of conquest or territory. This will be a war of extinction. The Korthak Empire will cease to exist, and every species in the galaxy will understand what happens when you murder human children. 3 days later, Admiral Pete Johnson stood in the war room deep beneath Earth Command. Around the table sat the most powerful people in human space: generals, scientists, intelligence chiefs, and weapons designers. The room was secured against any possible listening devices. "Show them Project Prometheus," Claire ordered. Dr. Helen Price stood up, activating a holographic display. She was a small woman with quiet eyes, but her work had terrified everyone who understood it. For 20 years, she had been developing weapons that the Galactic Coalition considered too dangerous to exist. "Ladies and gentlemen," Helen said calmly, "let me show you how we're going to kill them all." The first weapon appeared on the display, a sleek torpedo with strange markings along its hull. "Quantum tunneling kinetic warheads," Helen explained. "These weapons exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Shields, armor, defensive fields, none of it matters. The warhead phases through everything until it reaches the target's core, then converts the entire mass into energy." General Kevin Brooks leaned forward. "How much energy?" "A single torpedo can destroy a ship the size of a Korthak dreadnought. The target simply ceases to exist, converted into light and heat. No wreckage, no survivors, no escape pods." The second weapon made everyone uncomfortable. It looked like a small metal sphere, perfectly smooth and featureless. "Nanite swarms?" Helen continued. "Each sphere contains 1 trillion microscopic machines. When deployed on a planet's surface, they begin consuming everything: buildings, vehicles, organic matter, even the atmosphere. They convert consumed mass into more nanites, creating an exponential growth pattern." "How long until a planet is completely consumed?" asked Admiral Johnson. 72 hours for an Earth-sized world. The nanites are programmed to self-destruct after consuming all available matter, leaving behind a perfectly smooth sphere of sterile rock. The third weapon was the most terrifying. It appeared as a simple metal cylinder no larger than a briefcase. "Antimatter cascade bombs," Helen said quietly. "When detonated inside a star, these devices cause a chain reaction that forces the star to go supernova immediately. The explosion destroys everything in the system: planets, moons, space stations, ships. Nothing survives." The room was completely silent. President Adams looked around the table, seeing the fear in everyone's eyes. "The Galactic Coalition will condemn us," said Foreign Minister Robert Kane. "Let them," Claire replied. "The Korthak murdered our children. They will pay with their entire species." Admiral Johnson activated a star map showing Korthak space. Red dots marked 47 worlds under Korthak control, including their heavily defended homeworld. "Intelligence estimates the total Korthak population at 38 billion, he said. "They control 17 star systems with major military bases, mining colonies, and industrial centers. Their fleet consists of approximately 800 warships." Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster stepped forward. She was young for her rank, but her intelligence reports were always perfect. "We've identified their command structure, supply lines, and defensive positions. The Korthak believe their numbers and firepower make them invincible." "They're wrong," General Brooks said coldly. "Show them the deployment schedule." Amy activated another display showing Earth's military buildup. "We're converting every shipyard in human space to weapon production. The quantum torpedoes will be ready in 3 weeks. Nanite production begins immediately. The antimatter bombs require more time, but we'll have enough to sterilize their entire territory within 2 months." "What about our own people?" asked Dr. James Wright from the Colonial Defense Ministry. "We have human settlements near Korthak space. All human colonies within 50 light-years of Korthak territory are being evacuated," Admiral Johnson replied. "No civilian will be at risk during the extermination campaign." President Adams stood up, looking at each person around the table. "I need to know that everyone in this room understands what we're about to do. This isn't a military campaign. This isn't conquest. This is genocide. The complete elimination of an entire species. Are we all prepared to carry that burden? One by one they nodded. The Korthak had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They had proven that their species could not coexist with humanity. Then we're agreed, Claire said. Operation Final Solution begins immediately. The Korthak Empire has 6 weeks left to exist. Dr. Helen Price gathered her files, already planning the technical details of the extermination. Should we offer them a chance to surrender? No, General Brooks answered immediately. They showed no mercy to our civilians. They'll receive none in return. As the meeting ended, Admiral Johnson pulled Claire aside. Madam President, once we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will never look at humanity the same way. Claire thought about the pictures of dead children from New Haven. Families torn apart. Lives ended for no reason other than Korthak cruelty. Good, she said finally. Let them fear us. Let every species in the galaxy know that harming human civilians means extinction. The Korthak will be our example to the universe. Within hours, every human military base received the same coded message. Operation Final Solution was approved. The weapons of extinction were being prepared. In 6 weeks, the Korthak Empire would be nothing but empty space and silent worlds. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's capacity for mercy had limits, and the Korthak had found those limits at New Haven. Now they would pay the ultimate price for their cruelty. The countdown to extinction had begun. The first Korthak outpost died without warning. One moment, the alien military base was functioning normally, with 40 ships docked and 3,000 personnel going about their duties. The next moment, there was nothing but empty space where the base had been. Captain Tony Richards watched from his command chair aboard the UES Retribution. His ship was invisible to Korthak sensors, hidden by technology that humanity had kept secret for decades. The quantum torpedoes had worked perfectly, phasing through the base's shields like they didn't exist, then converting every atom into pure energy. Target eliminated, reported Lieutenant Sandra Wells from the weapons station. No debris, no energy signatures. The base is completely gone. Tony nodded grimly. This was humanity's new way of war. Complete total destruction with no survivors and no evidence. The Korthak would find empty space where their bases used to be, and they would never understand how it happened. Next target, Tony ordered. The Retribution moved through space like a ghost, striking Korthak installations throughout their territory. Mining stations, supply depots, communication relays. Everything that supported the alien empire's military machine simply vanished. Within 2 weeks, the Korthak had lost 60% of their support infrastructure. But the real horror was yet to come. Dr. Helen Price stood on the bridge of the research vessel UES Prometheus, watching as her nanite swarms were deployed on the Korthak colony world of Thek Prime. The metal spheres fell through the planet's atmosphere like deadly rain, each one containing 1 trillion microscopic machines programmed for one purpose: consumption. Deployment complete, reported the tactical officer. All nanite packages have reached the surface. Helen watched her instruments as the nanites activated. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Korthak city below continued functioning normally, its 10 million inhabitants unaware that their world was already dead. Then the consumption began. It started with the buildings on the city's edge. Metal structures simply began to fade away, atom by atom, as the nanites broke down their molecular bonds. The machines consumed everything: steel, concrete, glass, plastic, converting it all into more nanites. The Korthak tried to fight back, but their weapons were useless against an enemy they couldn't see. Plasma cannons and energy beams struck empty air while the nanites continued their work. Military vehicles, aircraft, even the aliens themselves were consumed as the microscopic machines spread across the planet's surface. Exponential growth pattern confirmed, Helen said clinically. Consumption rate is accelerating as expected. Within 6 hours, the entire city was gone. By the end of the first day, half the planet's surface was covered by a gray wave of consuming nanites. The Korthak government sent desperate messages to their fleet, begging for evacuation, but it was already too late. After 72 hours, Thek Prime was a smooth, lifeless ball of rock. 10 million Korthak had simply ceased to exist, converted into raw materials for the nanite swarms before the machines self-destructed as programmed. Similar scenes played out across 7 Korthak worlds. Planets that had been home to billions of aliens became sterile wastelands in a matter of days. The nanites consumed everything: cities, forests, oceans, even the atmosphere itself. When they finished their work, the worlds were perfectly smooth spheres of dead rock floating in space. Meanwhile, Earth's strike fleets hunted down Korthak warships throughout the galaxy. The alien vessels were larger and more heavily armed than human ships, but that advantage meant nothing when the enemy could phase weapons through any defense. Commander Sophie Brown led the assault on the Korthak Third Fleet near their border with neutral space. 40 alien warships waited in formation, their commanders confident in their superior firepower. They had no idea that death was already among them. All ships, fire, Sophie commanded. Invisible torpedoes phased through space, passing through the Korthak ship's shields and armor like they were made of air. The warheads reached their target's cores and detonated, converting matter directly into energy. 40 massive warships became 40 brief stars, then faded to nothing. Any survivors? Sophie asked. Negative, came the reply. Complete molecular breakdown confirmed on all targets. The pattern continued across Korthak space. Their fleets, bases, and colonies disappeared one by one, leaving behind only empty space and confused reports from neutral observers. The aliens tried to understand what was happening to them, but how could they comprehend weapons that existed in multiple dimensions or machines that consumed matter at the atomic level? Warlord Thax, the commander responsible for the New Haven massacre, finally realized his empire was dying. From his flagship in the Korthak home system, he sent desperate messages to the Galactic Coalition, offering to surrender and pay reparations for the human deaths. The response came from Earth Command, broadcast on all frequencies so every species in the galaxy could hear it. The Korthak Empire has been judged guilty of genocide against human civilians, came the cold voice of Admiral Pete Johnson. The sentence is extinction. No surrender will be accepted. No mercy will be shown. The Korthak species will be completely eliminated as an example to any who would harm innocent humans. Thax tried to rally his remaining forces for a final battle. 200 Korthak warships gathered around their homeworld, determined to make humanity pay dearly for their victory. The aliens waited for Earth's fleet to arrive, ready to fight to the death. Instead, a single human ship appeared at the edge of the system. Commander Sophie Brown's vessel, the UES Vengeance, held position just outside the Korthak defensive perimeter. This is Commander Brown to all Korthak forces, came the transmission. You murdered children at New Haven. You showed no mercy to innocent families. Now you will learn what extinction means. Sophie's ship launched a single weapon, an antimatter cascade bomb no larger than a briefcase. The device fell toward the Korthak sun, ignored by the alien defenders who were watching for an attack on their fleet. The bomb reached the star's core and detonated. The antimatter cascade began immediately, forcing nuclear reactions that the sun was not ready to handle. Within minutes, the star began to expand and brighten as it entered the final stages of its life. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance, Sophie ordered. The human ship jumped to hyperspace just as the Korthak sun went supernova. The explosion consumed everything in the system: the homeworld with its 17 billion inhabitants, the defending fleet, the orbital stations, even the outer planets. In seconds, the heart of the Korthak Empire became an expanding shell of superheated gas. Warlord Thax died without understanding what had killed him. His last thought was confusion as his flagship was vaporized by stellar fire. The supernova was visible from 50 light-years away, a new star that burned brighter than anything else in the local group. Across the galaxy, astronomers recorded the event, not knowing they were witnessing the birth of humanity's reputation as a species capable of absolute destruction. Within 18 months, the Korthak Empire ceased to exist. Their 47 worlds were empty wastelands or expanding clouds of stellar debris. Their fleets were scattered atoms floating in space. Their species was extinct except for a few scattered individuals hiding in neutral territory. The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. Humanity was no longer a minor species to be ignored or bullied. They had demonstrated weapons and capabilities that surpassed even the most advanced civilizations. And they had shown they would use those weapons without hesitation when their civilians were threatened. The message was clear and unmistakable. Touch human innocence and your species dies. No exceptions, no mercy. Complete extinction. The Korthak had learned this lesson too late. Now they served as a warning to every other species in the galaxy. Humanity protected its own no matter the cost. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 300 species sat in stunned silence as Ambassador Jack Harrison finished his presentation. Behind him, a holographic display showed the empty space where the Korthak Empire used to exist. The Korthak homeworld supernova can be seen from here, Jack said calmly, pointing to the chamber's observation windows. That bright star in the southern sky is all that remains of their civilization. 47 worlds, 800 warships, and 38 billion individuals all gone in 18 months. The Zilani representative, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, finally found his voice. Ambassador Harrison, your species has committed genocide on a scale never before seen. The Coalition cannot allow this to stand. Jack turned to face the alien diplomat. His expression was pleasant, almost friendly, but his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Counselor Veltar, humanity committed no crime. The Korthak Empire declared war on human civilians when they murdered 5,000 innocent people at New Haven. We simply finished what they started. But an entire species, protested the Vegan council member, her tentacles writhing with distress. Children, families, beings who had nothing to do with military decisions. Tell me, Counselor Ashkara, Jack replied, where were these innocent Korthak when their empire was enslaving other species? When their fleets were destroying colonies and selling survivors into bondage? The Korthak built their entire civilization on the suffering of others. They simply chose the wrong target. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter as representatives whispered among themselves. Fear filled the air like a toxic gas. Every species present understood that humanity had demonstrated capabilities beyond anything they had imagined possible. President Claire Adams watched the proceedings from Earth, her image appearing on screens throughout the galaxy as she addressed the Council directly. The Human Protection Protocol is now in effect, she announced. Any species that harms human civilians will face complete extinction. Any species that aids such attacks will share the same fate. However, species that trade fairly and respect human sovereignty will find us generous allies. The change was immediate and dramatic. Within days, species that had ignored humanity for decades were sending diplomatic envoys to Earth. Trade agreements that had been stalled for years were suddenly approved. The aggressive Vortak Confederation, known throughout the galaxy for raiding weaker civilizations, immediately signed a non-aggression treaty and offered reparations for past incidents involving human merchants. General Kevin Brooks stood in the Earth Defense Command Center, watching as requests for meetings flooded in from across the galaxy. Military attachés, trade representatives, and diplomatic missions. Everyone wanted to establish positive relations with humanity. Sir, reported Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster, we've received formal surrender documents from the hegemony of Scar. They're offering to pay reparations for the attack on our convoy last year. Kevin smiled grimly. The Scar had laughed at human demands for compensation after their pirates killed 23 merchant crew members. Now they were falling over themselves to make amends. What about the others? Kevin asked. The Antaran Empire has offered to share their medical technology. The Crystalline Collective wants to establish joint research projects. Even the Isolationist. Void Dwellers have sent a message expressing their desire for peaceful coexistence. The galaxy's entire power structure had shifted overnight. Species that had dominated their neighbors for centuries now lived in fear of human retaliation. The message was clear. Cooperation brought prosperity, but aggression brought extinction. Dr. Helen Price worked in her laboratory, overseeing the production of new weapons systems. The quantum torpedoes, nanite swarms, and antimatter bombs were being mass-produced, but she was already developing even more terrifying devices. Humanity would never again be caught unprepared. A delegation from the Tau Collective arrived at her facility, hoping to acquire some of Earth's advanced technology. Helen met with them in a secure conference room, surrounded by holographic displays showing her latest work. Dr. Price said, "The lead Tau scientist, our species has always valued knowledge above all else. We would be honored to collaborate with humanity on these remarkable discoveries." Helen smiled politely. The Tau were known for their intelligence and peaceful nature. They had never threatened human interests. "We would be happy to share some of our medical nanites and defensive technologies," she replied. "However, our weapon systems remain exclusively human. I'm sure you understand." The Tau scientist nodded quickly. "Of course, Doctor. We seek only to learn, not to threaten." This became the standard pattern. Peaceful species received access to beneficial human technologies, medical advances, agricultural improvements, and defensive systems. But the weapons that could sterilize worlds remained under strict human control. Admiral Pete Johnson established the Human Rapid Response Fleet, with ships stationed throughout human space and beyond. The vessels carried enough firepower to eliminate multiple star systems and could reach any point in human territory within days. Captain Tony Richards, now promoted to admiral, commanded the response fleet from the massive battleship UES Retribution. The ship was 10 times larger than any previous human vessel, armed with enough quantum torpedoes to destroy an entire alien fleet. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving a distress call from the human colony on Kepler 7. Pirates are attacking the settlement." Tony checked his tactical display. The pirates belonged to the Crimson Brotherhood, a multi-species organization that preyed on isolated colonies. They had been warned to avoid human targets after the Korthak extinction, but apparently some criminals were slow learners. "Plot a course for Kepler 7, maximum speed," Tony ordered. "Send a message to the pirates. They have exactly 1 hour to withdraw from human space or they will be eliminated." The Retribution jumped to hyperspace, carrying death toward those who had dared threaten human civilians. On Earth, Lieutenant Emma Morrison graduated from the Naval Academy. She was Jake Morrison's daughter, and she carried her father's memory with pride. During the graduation ceremony, she visited the memorial wall that listed the names of those killed in the New Haven massacre. The inscription read, "Their sacrifice taught the galaxy that humanity protects its own, no matter the cost." Emma placed her hand on her father's name, carved in black stone alongside Captain Nick Hayes, Captain Ryan Bell, and the 5,000 civilians who had died. Their deaths had changed everything. Humanity was no longer a weak species begging for protection from stronger neighbors. Alien diplomats from across the galaxy attended the ceremony, paying respects to the human dead and acknowledging the new reality. The small, quiet memorials they left at the base of the wall spoke volumes. Flowers from the peaceful Centaurans, crystals from the Silicate Collective, even a carefully crafted metal sculpture from the warlike Korvaxi, who had once considered humans beneath notice. The ceremony concluded with President Adams speaking to the graduating class and the assembled alien representatives. "The galaxy has learned that humanity has limits," she said, her voice carrying across the plaza. "We are peaceful when allowed to be, generous to those who treat us fairly and protective of those weaker than ourselves. But we are also capable of absolute ruthlessness when our innocents are threatened." She gestured toward the memorial wall, where the names of the New Haven dead caught the morning sunlight. "These people died because they trusted Earth to protect them. We failed them once. We will never fail again. The Human Protection Protocol ensures that their sacrifice will never be repeated, because any species that attempts such an act will simply cease to exist." The alien diplomats nodded solemnly. They understood the message perfectly. Humanity had proven that mercy had limits, and crossing those limits resulted in complete annihilation. As the ceremony ended and the diplomats returned to their ships, they carried with them a new understanding of their human neighbors. Earth's children were no longer naive idealists hoping for peace. They were a species that had looked into the darkness of the galaxy and chosen to become something more terrible than any of their enemies. The Korthak Empire was gone, but its destruction served a greater purpose. Every species in the galaxy now knew that harming human civilians meant extinction. Not defeat, not conquest, not submission, complete and utter destruction. The galaxy had entered a new age, an age where humanity's protection of its innocence was absolute. An age where the bright star that had once been the Korthak homeworld served as a permanent reminder to anyone who might consider testing humanity's resolve. The rescue fleet's destruction at New Haven had awakened something primal and terrifying in the human spirit. Now that force stood guard over every human world, ready to unleash extinction on any who dared threaten the innocent. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity would never again bury its children because of alien cruelty.